From our News Nation headquarters in America's Heartland, it's Monday, February 2nd. I'm Nick Smith in for Markey. I hope you had a great weekend. It's time for news for all Americans. Today, the House is back in session to try resolving the government shutdown. Some lawmakers think it could be over tomorrow. Others say not so fast. But right now, you're looking live at Capitol Hill. The Senate passed a bipartisan funding bill Friday, but the House was on recess until today. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries says his party won't approve the bill without sweeping changes to immigration enforcement. News Nation White House correspondent Libby Dean is live at the White House with the latest. Libby, this looks like this could be a fight.
Yes, certainly over here on Capitol Hill, this could be a fight, but we're seeing some optimism from the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. But right now, it's all up to the House to pass that Senate-approved bill to fund the remaining parts of the government. And in that partial shutdown, I mentioned House Speaker Mike Johnson. He says that'll happen rather very soon. Let's take a listen.
We'll get all this done by Tuesday. These the bills that have already been passed, we're going to do it again. It's a formality at this point. The Homeland Security bill is important, and we have important negotiations. The president is leading this. It's his play call to do it this way.
Air traffic controllers, TSA agents, and service members are again working without pay. The FAA also furloughed 10,000 workers over the weekend. Now, this bill, it funds those parts of the government for the rest of the year, but it does separate out that DHS funding so Congress can debate the potential reforms that some want to see to ICE and Border Patrol without holding up that broader spending package in the meantime of those negotiations. Now, Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says this is a step in the right direction, but what he's reiterating is this need for dramatic reform.
Body cameras should be mandatory. Masks should come off. Judicial warrants should absolutely be required, consistent with the Constitution, in our view, before DHS agents or ICE agents are breaking into the homes of the American people.
Because Democrats say they mostly won't support this package, House Republicans will have to pass this on their own. But it will be difficult, of course, Nick, because they have that very small margin Republicans do over in the House.
Libby, you talked about funding. What happens to DHS funding until there's actually a deal done?
Well, Nick, the package does allow DHS to keep its current funding levels at least for 2 weeks. And during that time, what we're going to see is congressional leaders, what they'll need to do is agree on this longer term funding. And those negotiations have to happen. And President Trump, he was actually asked over the weekend if Republicans are considering any of those Democratic demands for reform. Let's take a listen.
We'll talk about it. It's not appropriate yet. We have to let a little time go by, but we'll talk about it. We'll have to talk about that over the next 3 or 4 days.
So non-committal there to a timeline or any kind of negotiations, but congressional Republicans, they do seem willing to negotiate here and also have been acknowledging that some changes to ICE's operations are necessary. But what we're hearing from Senator Lindsey Graham, what he's doing is warning his colleagues not to give away too much as these negotiations continue, and they want to end that shutdown there, Nick.
Libby Dean with the very latest from the White House. Libby, thank you so much. A federal judge in Minnesota says that the Trump administration's immigration crackdown in the state can continue, denying a preliminary injunction sought by Minnesota's attorney general and the mayors of both Minneapolis and St. Paul. That ruling coming as a federal judge in Texas ordered the release of a 5-year-old boy and his father, whose detainment by ICE officers in Minnesota sparked nationwide outrage. News Nation's Xavier Walton joins us with the latest. Xavier, good morning.
Nick, good morning. Yeah, 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his dad are back in Minneapolis after this federal judge approved that emergency request from the family's attorney. That happening over the weekend. Those who have been following this story have watched it very closely. Obviously, Texas Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro sharing this video. It's a short clip, but showing Liam and his dad leaving the South Texas Family Residential Center. This is in Dilley, Texas. This is on Saturday, but in a fiery ruling filled with critiques of the Trump administration, federal judge Fred Beery, a Clinton appointee, ordered Liam Ramos and his father be released. Now, Judge Beery calling the government's push to meet daily deportation quotas, quote, ill-conceived, incompetently implemented, and traumatizing to children. Now, Liam, for background, and his father, Adrian Conejo Arias, who's originally from Ecuador, were picked up by ICE on January 20th, sparking outrage because the judge's ruling only applies to this particular case. And the immigration attorney we spoke to says we'll likely see similar cases moving forward.
course, it's a long-standing practice and policy that kids in removal without a final removal order should not and will not be detained. And so what we're seeing right now is a period of time in which the executive branch is really overstepping its authority. Congress is not acting, and the courts are just barely catching up.
So, Nick, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem pushing back, saying, you know what, there are no quotas, and that families are actually given the option to stay together. And that's exactly at least the case here, claiming DHS Secretary claiming that's what happened with Liam and his father in this case, Nick.
Xavier, thank you so much. Joining us now, two of the co-hosts of the Huddle podcast, which brings you inside the political headlines. Former White House press secretary for President Trump during his first term, Sean Spicer, and former Democratic advisor Dan Turrentine. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning,
guys,
Nick.
where do we even begin with this? There's a lot happening. Sean, I'm just going to throw it out there to you. Democrats and Republicans are now making competing demands of what they want in a DHS funding bill, but President Trump on Sunday not yet saying what he'd support. Sean, how do you actually see this playing out when Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries are saying that absolutely essential to have body cam, absolutely essential to have these face masks removed, and absolutely essential that ICE agents have a warrant before entering a home?
Well, Nick, it would be malpractice if I didn't note that today was Groundhog Day. I mean, we were here, 42 days ago, having a big discussion about what was going to take to fund the government. The Democrats held government funding up for 42 days and got a vote on health care, which they could have gotten on day one. I feel like we're literally we've seen our shadow, and we're going to have, another several weeks of this. I don't think it's as easy as everybody's thinking it is, because here's the problem, and everybody knows where I am politically, but let's back up. We had a deal. This government was about to be funded. Democrats balked on that deal, walked away from it, and shut down the government. The government is shut today. The Department of War, TSA, FEMA, all of these agencies, the FAA, air traffic controllers are shut down because Democrats reneged on a deal. Now what's happening is they got to figure it out, and Republicans are saying, great, if you want more demands, we've got more demands. And I don't think this thing ends anytime quickly. So they've created a mess, and I think we have to remind people who created the mess. And this is completely on Democrats, but we are back in a shutdown mode. The problem, as I said, is I don't know where it ends up, because the Democrats are claiming some things that, frankly, are unpalatable for many Republicans. And the Republicans are saying, great, if you want to open this back up, we've got demands on things like the SAVE Act. We want to secure our elections. So Mike Johnson might be, obviously projecting a sense of optimism, but I'm not there.
Dan, does the American public have the appetite for another long government shutdown, particularly when we've also seen polling that suggests voters want to see Democrats fight?
Yeah, no, I don't think we're going to have a long shutdown, but obviously we are having a shutdown. And look, I think that as the facts change, people change their minds. And I think the trauma the country has gone through the last week and a half, it's hard to believe it was just last Saturday, has changed the dynamic. Part of the reason that we have a new budget deal here is Donald Trump sees the political reality, and he reached out to cut a deal with Chuck Schumer. I do think Democrats, though, need to be careful. Hakeem Jeffries, what he's saying about body cameras and warrants, the American public is with him. But there are elements within our party that are very vocal that want to defund ICE or, heaven forbid, actually try to abolish it. And our party needs to acknowledge ICE has a legitimate reason to exist. We're not opposed to ICE. We just want to reform them. If we can do that, I think we'll own the middle, and we may own an issue that for 15 years has bedeviled us, and that's immigration.
Dan, if we start hearing chants for defund ICE, it will be, like Sean said, Groundhog Day all over again. Yep. Sean, that did not work out well for Democrats before. Tell me you believe that they've learned their lesson.
Well, we talk about this on the Huddle a lot every morning, that sometimes one party will take something that they have an advantage of it, go too far. So think about it. This issue of fraud is where the whole surge began in Minnesota. Republicans were riding high off of that Nick Shirley videos that News Nation covered, right? And what happened is the chaos ensued. Democrats thought they had the upper hand. And if they go too far, we saw the Don Lemon storming the church. That offended a lot of people. If they start talking about defunding ICE, it'll go too far. They did this with open borders and defund the police. I agree with Dan. Democrats have to be careful how hard they push this. They might lose the PR war real quick.
Dan, Speaker Johnson says he's confident he can get the Senate-passed bill through by Tuesday to end the partial shutdown. But, Dan, how much of a stretch will it be given that he can only lose 1 or 2 votes, right?
Yeah, speaking of Groundhog's Day here, boy, this is going to be tough. He's going to have to earn his leadership here. And I was actually, my eyebrows raised when I heard Mike Johnson say yesterday, this is Donald Trump's plan. Trump doesn't like when people throw him under the bus. This is Republicans' plan, and Johnson is the Speaker of the House. So I think Democrats are going to enjoy watching him sweat. Don't be surprised if we end up helping him ultimately.
Following up on that, Minnesota is still the focal point of this debate. A judge ordering the release of a 5-year-old and his father who were detained by ICE in Minnesota and taken to a facility in Texas. What's the political impact of this as the fight over DHS funding escalates? Sean, you first.
Well, look, I think one of the things that we have to understand is we talk about this often on our show, that there's a difference between the politics and the policy and the imagery. Perception matters in the game of politics. We are pursuing a policy that says if you're in this country illegally, if you've committed a crime, you must go. And I think that's the right position for this administration. They campaigned on it. They won on it. But there is a perception issue that when you look like you've gone too far, when chaos ensues, when little kids are held outside a vehicle. Again, remember, that's not what happened, right? This father, Tom Homan rightly points out, if an American gets pulled over for DWI on any given night, the child is separated. You're not going to leave the kid in the parent's custody or bring him to jail with the parent. This happens every single day in America. But that doesn't mean that you can't be cognizant of the perception of what that looks like. And I think that this is where we've got to be careful going in and being very clear with our messaging and our tactics about what we're doing to keep the country safe.
Dan, the last 30, go to you.
Yeah, pictures tell 1,000 words. And I think when immigration is about, bad hombres and chaos at the border, it's good for Republicans. When you have images of kids who look like that could be your son or daughter or your neighbor or your colleague, it's not good for Republicans. And that picture may go down in the history books.
Dan Turrentine, Sean Spicer, gentlemen, happy Monday to you both. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
See you soon. Thanks,
Don't
Nick.
forget, you can watch The Huddle every weekday morning at 8:30 Eastern, and you can find it at youtube.com/the DC Huddle. Now to more headlines we're following closely this morning. The border crossing between Gaza and Egypt has reopened. This is a key part of the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. An Egyptian official tells the Associated Press about 50 Palestinians would cross in each direction today. Ambulances and aid trucks have also been seen waiting on the Egyptian side of the border. Many of the Gazans leaving the territory during the limited crossings are expected to be people needing medical attention. President Trump is apparently open to sitting down with Iran. That's according to Axios, which also reports that its sources say White House envoy Steve Witkoff will be meeting with Iranian officials later this week in Turkey. Meanwhile, President Trump is said to be still weighing options over Iran over its deadly crackdown on anti-regime protesters. The president has said military strikes are on the table. And President Trump says the Kennedy Center will close its doors for 2 years starting on July 4th for what he's calling a complete rebuilding. On Truth Social, the president said financing for the remodeling project is in place. President Trump added his name to the Kennedy Center after he became chair of the board last year. Since the renaming, several performers have canceled their appearances. The Seattle Seahawks and New England Patriots are now in Northern California ahead of Super Bowl 60 this weekend in Santa Clara, California. Kickoff for Sunday's game, a rematch of Super Bowl 49, is set for 6:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC. And if you're one of the millions of Americans reportedly expected to bet a record $1.7 billion on the big game, the Seahawks are currently favored by most sportsbooks. And Punxsutawney Phil calls it 6 more weeks of winter. We're live at the center of the excitement. Hear from an important member of the Groundhog Inner Circle to learn more about what goes on behind the scenes on Groundhog Day. Plus, Floridians are experiencing some of the coldest temperatures they've seen in decades, even colder than Alaska. They're not the only ones in a bitter cold snap. What's to come for the Southeast?